My daughter pushed me down the basement stairs, turned around, and walked away. I guess she thought the old man would finally get the message. Her husband's only reaction was, "Just leave him down there." They didn't try to help. I was left entirely in the dark, dealing with a broken hip and a fractured wrist. But right before the overwhelming pain could take over, I managed to make one phone call. Did they really think I was that naive? What they didn't realize was that I had been quietly watching them for months. Once the sun comes up, that single phone call is going to change everything. Welcome, everyone. I'm really curious to know, if you found yourself in Luke's position, what would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Just a quick disclaimer before we begin. This is a fictional story exploring complex human choices. The characters and events are entirely made up, though the themes carry real-world weight, and any resemblance to actual events is purely coincidental. Now let's get into it. When my daughter pushed me down those basement stairs, I didn't even try to stop it. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have grabbed the railing, struggled, or screamed. But I didn't. I just fell. 15 steps. On the way down, I actually counted them. 1, 2, 3. The old wood groaned under the weight of a 68-year-old body that used to carry a lot of weight around this city. 4, 5, 6. Halfway down, the scent of dust and dampness hit me. It's that classic Newark basement smell that never really leaves, no matter how many dehumidifiers you run. 7, 8, 9. The edge of the 11th step caught my right hip. The pain was immediate and blinding, the kind that completely whites out your vision, but I kept my mouth shut. 12, 13, 14, 15. The cold concrete floor rushed up to meet me. I landed hard on my right side and heard a distinct snap, the broken hip. My wrist, which I had instinctively put out to break the fall, fractured too. My head bounced off the floor, not hard enough to knock me out, but enough to make the basement spin in the shadows for a few long seconds before settling back into focus. The furnace in the corner hummed along. On the wall, the old clock Patricia bought at a yard sale 30 years ago kept right on ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Up above, I could hear heavy, frantic footsteps through the floorboards. Travis's voice cut through, muffled but perfectly clear. She actually did it. It wasn't a question, it was a plain statement. There was almost a sense of relief in it, a confirmation of a plan that had been in motion far longer than I had realized. Then came Amanda, my daughter, crying out. That sound cut deeper than the fall, worse than the sharp agony radiating from my hip and wrist. Dad! Oh my God, Dad! The basement door slammed shut. The lock clicked into place. Lying there in the dark, I took inventory of the damage. The right hip was in bad shape, definitely broken. The left wrist was fractured for sure, already swelling tight against my sleeve. My head throbbed, but my mind was perfectly clear. My ribs were bruised, making every breath a painful chore, but nothing felt punctured. I wiggled my toes, and both feet responded. I moved my fingers, and most of them worked. I was going to survive this, and that was exactly what they didn't understand. Amanda and Travis thought 15 steps would be the end of it. They thought an old man hitting a concrete floor meant a clean, tragic accident, the kind that happens all the time when seniors live alone in houses with steep basement stairs. But I've survived far worse things than this, in places much darker than my own basement. Using my good hand, I pulled my phone from my shirt pocket. The screen lit up the darkness, completely unbroken. Patricia always told me I needed a case, but I'd always been stubborn about it. It's funny the things that cross your mind when you're lying on a concrete floor with broken bones. I scrolled through my contacts and found the name I needed in a second, the only name that mattered right now. Michael Costa. I hadn't dialed his number in 3 years, not since Patricia's funeral. He had stood in the back row to pay his respects, reminding me that certain debts never expire and some friendships never truly end, no matter how far you walk away or how hard you try to leave your past behind. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Luke," his voice came through thick as gravel and old tobacco. "Is that you?" "It's time, Michael." There was a brief silence on the line. It wasn't confusion, it was instant understanding. Michael was always incredible at reading between the lines. Where? Woodside Avenue, the old house. How bad is it? Bad enough. I shifted slightly, swallowing a groan as a sharp wave of pain hit my hip. But I can wait. I need you to bring Salvatore. Another pause, this one lasting a bit longer. Are you certain? I'm certain. We'll be there tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Can you hold out until then? I looked over at the clock. It was 7:30 p.m., roughly 11 hours to go. I can hold out. Luke, Michael's tone softened just a fraction. What happened? I closed my eyes and pictured Amanda's face right before she pushed me. Tears had been streaming down her cheeks. The apologies were already forming on her lips. It was her fear of Travis, her fear of facing consequences, and her terror of losing everything that had driven her hands forward against my chest. My daughter happened? Jesus. Yeah. Hang tight, brother. We're on our way. The call went dead. I rested the phone on the concrete next to me and let my head sink back to the floor. The cold began to seep through my shirt and settle into my bones, but I didn't mind it. The cold keeps you sharp. It reminds you that you're still breathing. Above me, the pacing continued. Travis's voice started up again, kept low and indistinct. Then Amanda's voice chimed in, higher, sounding frantic. They were probably arguing about what to do next, whether to call for help now or wait until morning to discover me, so they could play the role of the grieving family. I almost laughed. They had absolutely no idea what was coming for them. They had no clue that the old man they just tossed down the stairs, the quiet widower who spent 35 years working quietly in construction, used to be someone else entirely. Someone who knew exactly how to wait in the dark. Someone who understood that real justice isn't delivered in a fit of rage, but with absolute patience. The clock kept ticking. The furnace kept humming. My hip throbbed in time with my pulse. I counted the minutes, steady and deliberate, just like I had counted those stairs. 1, 2, 3. Let's take a step back so you can understand how a 68-year-old man ends up at the bottom of his own basement stairs. Let me tell you about the daughter I raised, the choices that brought us to this moment, and who I was before I became Luke Henderson. And let me explain why. When my daughter pushed me, I didn't even try to fight back, because some things you see coming from a mile away, and you just let them happen. The fall isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. I didn't always go by Luke Henderson. 35 years ago, I carried a different name and handled a completely different kind of work. The kind of job that didn't come with tax forms, a retirement plan, or any illusion that you'd live long enough to collect a pension. I was the enforcer for the DeMarco family. If you know anything about the history of Newark, you know that name. If you don't, consider yourself fortunate. They used to call me the cleaner, not the type who shows up afterward with a mop and a bucket. I left that to other people. My job was to resolve issues before they turned into the kind of mess that required a cleanup crew. A business owner who was months behind on his protection payments, a rival group trying to move into DeMarco territory, a witness who suddenly started remembering too many details. I was the one sent to have a conversation. Most of the time, a conversation was all it took. Along with the clear understanding that the next visit wouldn't involve any talking, I was incredibly good at it. Maybe too good. I understood something most people overlook. Handling these situations isn't about anger. It's entirely about control. It's about knowing the exact amount of pressure needed to get results. A fractured hand sends a completely different message than a broken jaw, and a broken jaw says something entirely different than a broken neck. The sheer threat of those outcomes was always the most powerful tool. I used to convince myself that I wasn't taking lives, which made it easier to sleep at night. I was just an insurance policy, a force of gravity, the inevitable consequence when people made the wrong decisions. That all changed on a Tuesday morning in March when I walked into Lucy's diner. She was pouring coffee, her blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. When she spoke, her green eyes looked right at you, instead of looking right through you, or shifting away like most people did when they saw someone like me. Her name tag read, Patricia. The usual? She asked, even though I had never stepped foot in the place before. I must have looked completely thrown off because she laughed. You just look like a man of habit. Black coffee, 2 eggs sunny side up, crispy bacon, dry toast. Am I close? She was dead on. I started going back every Tuesday, then Tuesdays and Thursdays, until I was there almost every single day I wasn't working. We talked about small things at first, the local news, whether the Jets would ever make it back to the Super Bowl. Eventually, the conversations ran deeper, where she grew up, what she wanted to do outside of waitressing, her dreams, the kind of dreams people like her were actually allowed to hold on to. She never once asked what I did for a living. Maybe she didn't want to know, or maybe she already had an idea and chose not to care. Newark is a small place. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. 3 months later, I took her out to a nice dinner far away from that diner. She said yes. 6 months after that, she told me she was pregnant. I should have felt overjoyed or terrified or filled with some kind of intense emotion. Instead, all I felt was a deep, quiet certainty that everything was about to change. It had to change. We were sitting in her apartment, a small third-floor walk-up, but she had transformed it into a real home with plants, framed photos, and the constant smell of something baking. She was crying, not out of fear, but from a mix of happiness, worry, and 1,000 other emotions hitting her all at once. Let's get married, I told her. She looked at me, really looked at me. What is it you actually do? Don't lie to me. I'm having your child. I deserve the truth. So I laid it out for her. Not every single detail. There are things you never say out loud, even to the woman you love, but enough for her to fully understand. She didn't scream or order me out. She just sat in silence for a long time. Then she gave me the ultimatum that completely shifted my life. I'm not raising a child with a man who works for criminals. I won't watch you come home with bruised knuckles and ruined shirts, constantly wondering if tonight is the night you don't make it back at all. You need to choose, that life or this one. You can't have both. I chose her. I chose us. I chose the baby growing inside her, who would eventually be Amanda. Michael Costa was the one who helped me disappear. He was my partner back then, the guy who always had my back when things went south. We split everything down the middle, and he understood the business just as well as I did. We had saved each other's lives more than once, building a bond that doesn't just snap when you walk away from the lifestyle. He set me up with a completely fresh identity, a clean social security number, and a birth certificate from a Pennsylvania hospital that had burned down a decade prior. I became Luke Henderson, born in 1958, starting over with zero ties to the DeMarco family or anyone from that world. Are you completely sure about this? Michael asked when he handed over the paperwork. There's no turning back from this. You step across and you're entirely out. They'll let you walk because I'm putting my reputation on the line for you, but that door's locked forever. I know. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. If you ever find yourself in a tight spot, call me. I don't care if it's 5 years or 50. We're brothers. That doesn't change. Over the next 35 years, I only dialed that number twice. Once when Patricia passed away, and the second time was tonight. I picked up construction work. It turned out my hands were just as capable of building things as they were of breaking them. Framing houses, hanging drywall, doing finish work. It was honest labor for honest pay, allowing me to sleep without wondering if someone was coming to settle a score. Patricia and I had a quiet wedding at City Hall, and Amanda was born 6 months later. Holding my daughter for the very first time, I finally understood exactly what Patricia meant. I saw why she gave me that choice. Looking at Amanda, this tiny, perfect life completely dependent on me, I couldn't imagine raising her to think that causing harm was just a career. Patricia raised Amanda with a strong sense of honesty, integrity, and family values. She made sure our daughter grew up knowing right from wrong, far away from the gray areas I used to live in. I really thought it worked. I thought I had left that past completely behind. I believed 35 years of living an honest life had earned me some peace, a daughter who cared about me and a wife who made me a far better man than I had any right to be. For over 3 decades, I was simply Luke Henderson, husband, father, construction worker. A guy whose biggest stress was whether the rain would hold off long enough to finish a roofing job. Then Patricia got sick. I stood by Patricia's resting place for the third Sunday in a row. It's located at Holy Cross Cemetery in North Arlington, about a 20-minute drive from Woodside Avenue if you catch the lights right. She's buried under a large oak tree in the northeast corner, where the morning sun cuts through the leaves to paint quiet patterns on the grass. She would have loved the spot. Patricia always said mornings were the best part of the day because they represented a fresh start. "I miss you," I said out loud. It was the exact same thing I had said the previous 2 Sundays and every Sunday before that for the last 3 years. It took 18 months for the illness to take her. It started in her lungs and eventually spread everywhere. By the end, she was down to 90 pounds and barely remembered my name half the time. But whenever I took her hand, she would still smile. She still told me she loved me and made me promise that I'd be all right once she was gone. I lied to her. I told her I'd be fine. But 3 years later, I still wasn't. Without her, the house just felt empty. It was too large, too quiet. I'd wake up in the morning and instinctively reach out for her side of the bed, forgetting for a few seconds that she wasn't there anymore, that she was never coming back. I'd catch myself brewing coffee and setting out 2 mugs before remembering. I'd cook dinner for 2 and end up tossing half of it away. The TV stayed on most nights, just to keep the silence at bay. It didn't matter what was playing, I just needed something to fill the void. Patricia used to tease me that I watched too much television, but now it felt like it wasn't enough. Sometimes I'd visit the old diner, Lucy's, where we first met, but everything had changed. The staff was different, the coffee tasted different, and the booths we used to sit in had been replaced by those high-top tables that make anyone over 60 look ridiculous trying to climb into. Amanda called once a week, usually on Sunday afternoons after church. She'd ask how I was doing, and I'd tell her I was fine. She'd share updates about Oliver, Travis's job, and whatever else was going on in their lives. Then we'd run out of things to say and say goodbye. The calls rarely lasted more than 10 minutes. We used to be incredibly close. When she was little, we'd spend every Saturday at the park. I'd push her on the swings until my arms ached, build sandcastles, and buy ice cream from the truck. On the walk home, she'd fall asleep right on my shoulder, and Patricia would tuck her into bed while I started on dinner. But that was all before the teenage years, before that natural distance grows between a father and his daughter. It's that phase where daughters realize their fathers are just regular men, flawed, busy, and not always sure of the right words to say. Patricia had always bridged that gap. Even when Amanda and I didn't know how to talk to each other, she kept us connected. When she passed, that bridge went down with her. So when Amanda called on that 3rd Sunday, right after my visit to the cemetery, and made her suggestion, I desperately wanted to believe it was genuine. I wanted to believe my daughter was reaching out because she truly cared, because she was worried about me, and because family is supposed to look out for one another. "Dad, you shouldn't be living all by yourself in that massive house," she said. "It's way too much space for one person. And Oliver really needs to spend more time with his grandfather. He barely remembers you." It stung to hear, but it was completely true. Since Patricia passed, I had only seen Oliver maybe 4 times. Christmas, Thanksgiving, and a couple of birthdays. I'd hold him for a few minutes, hand him a gift, and watch him squirm to get back down and play. He didn't really know me at all. "Let us move in with you," Amanda suggested. "Just for a little while until you get back on your feet. We can help cover the bills. Travis can take care of the home repairs, and you'll have company. You won't have to be so lonely." Travis hopped on the line next. "Luke, it would actually be a huge help for us, too. The rent in Jersey City is completely draining us. Plus, this way Oliver gets to grow up surrounded by family. It's a win-win for everyone, you know." I really should have said no. I should have picked up on that overly casual tone in Travis's voice, or noticed how quickly Amanda pushed the idea before I even had a chance to think it over. But I was sitting there in an empty house, in the living room where Patricia used to knit while we watched baseball together. The only thought in my mind was that maybe this was the new start she wanted for me. "All right," I told them, "you can move in." They arrived 2 weeks later with a U-Haul truck backed into the driveway and cardboard boxes piled everywhere. Oliver was running all over the front yard while Amanda directed Travis on where to take the furniture. When I opened the door, she gave me a massive hug, the first real hug I'd received in years. "Thank you, Dad. This means the world to us. The first few weeks were wonderful." Amanda's dinners tasted remarkably like the meals Patricia used to make. Meatloaf with a brown sugar glaze, chicken roasted with lemon and rosemary. She even baked my favorite chocolate cake. The house felt alive again, smelling like a place where people were actually living, not just getting by. Travis was incredibly polite and eager to help out. He fixed the loose railing on the front porch, cleared out the gutters, complimented the yard, and asked all about my old construction days, seeming genuinely interested in the stories I told. And Oliver, watching him run around, brought so much energy back into the house. His laughter filled the halls, his toys took over the living room, and during cartoons, he'd climb right into my lap and fall fast asleep, warm and completely trusting. I truly believed I had rebuilt my family. I pictured Patricia looking down from somewhere, smiling because her stubborn husband had finally let people back into his life. But then tiny details began to shift. Travis started asking casual questions. How much was the house worth? Did I still owe anything on the mortgage? Which bank did I use? "Just curious," he'd always say, keeping it light. Amanda brought up my estate planning. "Dad, you have a will set up, right? It's really important. For Oliver's sake, we just want to make sure everything is taken care of, just in case." Just in case what? I was 68, not 90. I still walked 3 miles every single morning and felt perfectly healthy. I had plenty of years left in me, but I kept it to myself, not wanting to seem defensive or ruin the great dynamic we had built. The questions kept coming, always casual, always sounding perfectly reasonable, always wrapped in that same caring tone that made it seem like they were just looking out for my best interests. Maybe they were. Maybe 3 years of isolation had just made me paranoid about the first signs of kindness. But I couldn't shake this lingering feeling that something was off, that the warmth in the house was covering up something cold. 6 weeks after they moved in, I stumbled across a folder. Travis's folder left right inside his car, and in that moment, everything completely flipped. My truck wouldn't start that morning. The battery was completely dead. I had a few errands to run, and Travis's Honda was sitting right there in the driveway, with the keys sitting by the door like usual. I didn't think twice about borrowing it. We were family now, after all. As I took a sharp turn onto Market Street, a manila folder slid right off the passenger seat and landed on the floorboard, bursting half open to reveal the paperwork inside. I could have just picked it up and ignored it. But an old instinct flared up, causing me to pull over into a grocery store parking lot to look inside. The very first document was a quitclaim deed. Property address, 247 Woodside Avenue. Grantor, Luke Henderson. Grantee, Gateway Properties, LLC. The date was from 2 months ago, and right at the bottom was my signature, completely notarized with an official seal. Except I had never signed that document. I sat there staring at my own name written in a handwriting that wasn't mine. I wasn't even angry yet. It was just a cold realization. The unsettling feeling I'd been having wasn't paranoia at all. It was real. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of every single page. The signature, the notary seal, the legal description, everything. Then I studied the signature closely. It was a highly skilled forgery. Whoever pulled it off clearly knew what they were doing. The tilt on the L, the sweep of the H, even the dot over the I. But there were still telltale signs, tiny moments of hesitation in the ink, where the pen had rested a fraction of a second too long. It was the subtle difference between writing your own name for the 1,000th time and carefully copying an exercise. I had encountered forged signatures back in my old life. You had to know how to spot them. This one was good, but it wasn't flawless. There were more documents inside the folder, a property transfer notice from the county clerk, a confirmation of the deed registration, even a formal letter from a law firm congratulating Gateway Properties on acquiring the asset. My home, the house Patricia and I had scrimped and saved to buy, the place where we raised Amanda. 35 years of memories built into every single board and nail, completely stolen away on paper, legally taken. I did a quick search on my phone for Gateway Properties LLC. It was a Delaware corporation registered to a simple P.O. box in Newark. No website, no employees, no public business footprint. A classic shell company. A ghost. I found the notary's name stamped on the deed and gave her office a call. Caldwell Notary Services. This is Luke Henderson. I'm calling to verify a deed notarized at your office 2 months ago for Woodside Avenue. A brief pause followed, filled with the sound of typing. Yes, I see it here. The quitclaim deed for Woodside Avenue. You came in with your son-in-law to sign it. Is there an issue? You came in with your son-in-law. No issue at all, just verifying. Thank you. I hung up the phone. Travis had forged my name and brought someone along to the notary, likely Amanda, to pass themselves off as me. They made the whole thing look completely legitimate and filed it with the county. On paper, the house no longer belonged to me. Amanda knew about it. She had to. The notary explicitly said, you and your son-in-law. It wasn't just Travis acting alone. It was both of them. I could have confronted them right then and there. I could have marched into the house and demanded answers, called the police, or hired a lawyer. But I chose not to. Legal battles take time and cost a fortune. Sometimes, before you make a move, you need to see the entire chessboard. You need to uncover not just what they did, but exactly why they did it and how deep the rabbit hole goes. I drove back home. Amanda was busy cooking dinner, Oliver was playing with his blocks, and Travis walked in and gave her a kiss. Amanda asked how my day had gone. Not bad, I replied. Borrowed your car since my truck's battery died. Hope that was all right. Of course it is, Luke. What's mine is yours. We're family. Family. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing over that signature and picturing Amanda at the notary's office. It was chilling how easily they could sit at my dinner table, smiling right after stealing my home. Patricia's voice echoed in my head from the past, reminding me of advice she gave when Amanda was young, and I'd get frustrated trying to handle problems with brute force. Sometimes you have to step back to see the whole picture, Luke. Don't just focus on the immediate trouble. So I stepped back and just watched. Really watched. Travis left for work every morning at 8 and came back at 6. But I started noticing the mileage on his car was way higher than a 30-minute commute accounted for. I began writing down the odometer readings to track them. Amanda claimed she was taking Oliver to the park, the library, or playgroups, but I started spotting her car parked outside the mall for hours at a time. She'd come home with empty hands, a completely exhausted expression, and her phone practically glued to her palm. I went through the recycling bin and uncovered credit card statements, not my own, showing charges at high-end jewelry stores, expensive restaurants, and a boutique hotel in Montclair I'd never heard of. It was Travis's card, but the dates fell right during the work week, times he was supposed to be at the office. I made sure to grab the mail before they could get to it, intercepting notices they never intended for me to see. Tax assessments addressed to Gateway Properties and insurance paperwork featuring a business address I didn't recognize. Late one evening, when they assumed I was fast asleep, I caught their hushed conversation in the kitchen. How much longer is this going to take? Amanda's voice sounded drained and tense. Not much longer, Travis whispered back. We just need to stay patient and keep playing the part. He's an old man with a valuable, completely paid-off piece of real estate. We need this, Amanda, for Oliver's future, and for us. A long silence followed before Amanda spoke again. I know. It just feels... Don't focus on how it feels. Think about the 400,000. Think about clearing our debts. Think about Montclair. 400,000, Montclair. Standing there in the hallway, right outside the kitchen, I listened to my own daughter and her husband discuss draining my assets as if it were a simple corporate transaction, treating me like an item waiting to be liquidated. I went back to bed and stared up at the ceiling, counting the plaster cracks I'd been meaning to fix for years. That was when I realized this wasn't just about the house. There had to be more to it. You don't just forge a quitclaim deed to steal a house you're already living in unless there's a much bigger play in motion. I needed to find out what it was. So I kept watching and keeping records, taking photos when they weren't looking, checking Travis's car when he was in the shower, and looking through Amanda's purse while she was in the yard with Oliver. I was piecing together the rest of the puzzle. Slowly, it all started coming together. Loan documents, life insurance policies, and their actual plan. But all of that came to light later. First, I had to sit with the crushing reality that my own flesh and blood was completely willing to steal everything I owned while looking me in the eye and calling me Dad. I returned the folder to the exact spot I found it and kept my mouth shut. But I kept observing, and it didn't take long to find more. 2 weeks later, I uncovered the loan paperwork. Travis had left his laptop open in the living room while he went upstairs to shower, and Amanda was out back with Oliver. I pretended to read the newspaper, but out of the corner of my eye, I could see the screen glowing. I probably should have looked away, minded my own business, kept my head down, and continued gathering evidence slowly. But I looked. The file name is what caught my eye first. Dad Project. Not House Project or Loan File, but Dad Project. Like I was a problem to be managed and solved. Moving quickly, I opened the document and started skim reading. The primary page was an application for a reverse mortgage through Liberty Financial Group for $420,000. The borrower listed was Luke Henderson for the property at 247 Woodside Avenue. Right at the bottom was my forged signature, matching the quitclaim deed perfectly. But this was drastically worse because I knew all about Liberty Financial. The name hit me like a ghost from the past I'd spent 35 years trying to forget. Liberty Financial wasn't a legitimate mortgage lender. It was a front operation run by Salvatore Giordano. It was the exact kind of place that provided fast cash to desperate people who couldn't secure legal loans, catering to those who wouldn't ask questions about the terms or the severe consequences of missing a payment. A lifetime ago, I had helped set up operations just like Liberty Financial. I knew exactly how they worked, how predatory the terms were, and how quickly the interest compounded. I knew that missing a single payment didn't just mean a late fee. I kept scrolling down and found bank statements for Travis's account, Amanda's account, and a joint account I didn't even know they shared. There was no sign of the $420,000 anywhere, no sudden influx of cash, nothing. So where did the money go? I heard the shower upstairs click off, warning me that my time was running out. I opened a few more files frantically until I hit one labeled Insurance. It was a life insurance policy for $500,000, with Luke Henderson as the insured, Amanda Henderson listed as the beneficiary, and myself named as the policy owner. Except I had never taken out a life insurance policy. I'd never even thought about it. The policy Patricia had through the hospital was always more than enough. I clicked open the PDF and skimmed the text. It was issued through Barry Simmons's insurance agency in West Orange, dated 6 months prior. The monthly premium was $239.88, set up for automatic withdrawal from an account ending in 4752. That was my account, my personal checking account. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and ran through the last 6 months of statements until I spotted it. Every single month, an automatic payment of $239.88 went out to Simmons Insurance. I had completely missed it, never looking closely enough because the amount was small enough to blend right in with the utilities and groceries that automatically deduct in the background of your life. But looking at the whole picture, the math was devastating. 6 months of payments, on top of the months it took to get the policy approved, meant they had been planning this for over a year. The shower noise stopped completely, followed by footsteps overhead. I snapped photos of everything as fast as I could. The loan papers, the insurance policies, the bank statements, then shut the laptop, leaving it exactly as Travis had left it. I sank back into my chair and focused on the newspaper. 5 minutes later, Travis walked downstairs, his hair damp, wearing a fresh t-shirt and jeans. He picked up his laptop without a second thought. "Hey, Luke, need anything from the store? I'm about to head out." "No, I'm all set, thank you." He offered a quick smile and walked out the door. I sat there holding the paper, not processing a single word on the page. My mind was completely consumed by the math. $420,000 from Giordano, $500,000 from the life insurance policy, nearly $1 million total. Once they cleared their debts and sold the house, they stood to clear an easy $400,000. Over $1 million was the price tag they had placed on making me disappear. The financial setup they created was remarkably precise. By forging the deed, they managed to quietly transfer ownership of the house directly into their hands. Next came the reverse mortgage, turning the property into an immediate source of cash, while initiating a dangerous countdown. Finally, they secured that life insurance policy to ensure a massive payout, which they planned to use to handle their debt to Giordano before walking away with the property entirely. There was just one critical flaw in their logic. A debt to someone like Giordano is never truly settled. It becomes an ongoing obligation that keeps growing over time, but they clearly believed they were clever enough to outmaneuver the system. They assumed the payout would solve all their problems, allowing them to settle up and move on without looking back. All they needed to do first was entirely remove me from the equation. A lot of minor details started making sense, like Travis constantly offering to repair the loose railing on the basement stairs, or Amanda suggesting I save some money by clearing out the gutters myself instead of hiring help. Recently, both of them had become incredibly attentive regarding my health. "Dad, you really need to go in for a checkup, just to make sure you're doing okay," they would tell me. It was all about creating a medical paper trail, making sure that if anything suddenly went wrong, it would look perfectly expected and entirely natural. I thought about that seafood dinner Travis prepared the previous week that left me severely ill, causing my neck to swell up with a harsh rash and sending me straight to the emergency room. The doctor called it a sudden allergic reaction, assuming I had just developed a sensitivity to shellfish later in life. But I've never been allergic to anything. Travis had purposely prepared that meal as a test, trying to see if they could trigger a reaction that looked like a natural medical emergency, leaving a clear record of sudden health complications. If that approach failed, they were prepared to try something else. Accidents happen constantly. Older people lose their balance, mix up their prescriptions, or simply don't wake up in the morning. I've witnessed those exact patterns in my previous life, carefully orchestrated incidents designed to guarantee a smooth insurance payout to a seemingly devastated family. The groundwork had been laid out months ago. They weren't just trying to take my home. They needed me gone for that insurance money, and they had been planning the entire scenario for months. Discovering Vanessa was entirely intentional on my part. I needed to clear my head and get away from that house, where every single room felt crowded by my daughter's betrayal. So I drove out to a cafe in Montclair. Montclair is only about a 20-minute drive from Newark, a beautiful, quiet suburb with tree-lined streets, excellent schools, and a peaceful environment. It's the kind of area people move to when they're looking to establish a better life, provided they have the financial means. I parked my truck along Bloomfield Avenue, walked past high-end boutiques and restaurants, and decided to sit outside a quiet cafe to think in the crisp October air. That was exactly when I spotted Travis sitting at a corner table. He wasn't alone. Sitting right across from him was a beautiful blonde woman in her early 30s, and she was very noticeably pregnant. I froze right in the doorway. Travis reached across the table, gently took her hand, and she smiled warmly at him. Then he leaned forward to give her a meaningful kiss, the kind that made it instantly clear this was a deeply established relationship. Before Travis could look up and notice me, I backed out of the cafe, crossed the street, and found a bench with a perfectly clear view. I pulled out my phone, pretending to scroll, while keeping my eyes locked on them. They stayed at the table for an hour, talking and laughing easily. Travis kept resting a protective hand on her stomach, and she would lean over to rest her head against his shoulder. Every single gesture showed a deep level of intimacy and commitment. This wasn't a casual fling. They were living an entirely separate life together. When they finally stood up to leave, I quietly followed them, keeping a safe 3-car distance between us. It's an old habit. Even after 35 years out of the business, you don't forget how to follow someone without being noticed. They drove to a brand new residential development on the north side of Montclair, filled with large, freshly constructed houses, immaculate lawns, and young trees. It was exactly the kind of neighborhood upwardly mobile families buy into. Travis pulled the car into the driveway of a beautiful two-story colonial home with beige siding, black shutters, and a spacious two-car garage. The woman got out of the car, and Travis followed her closely inside. The living room lights flipped on, and through the front window I could see them moving around the kitchen together. The entire scene looked completely normal, like a man returning to his actual home, and perhaps it was. I sat in my truck 3 houses down, quietly taking photos of the house, the address, and a silver Nissan Altima parked in the driveway. It looked newer than Travis's Honda and featured a baby on board sticker on the bumper next to a small delivery date tracker set for December. I drove back home, kept my mouth shut, and sat down to dinner with Amanda and Travis, as if nothing had happened. I watched them tuck Oliver into bed, then went back to my room and began searching public records. In New Jersey, property transactions are part of the public domain if you know exactly where to look. The house on Hillside Avenue in Montclair had been purchased 4 months ago for $450,000. The buyer listed on the deed was Vanessa Clark. Vanessa, I finally had a name to work with. Digging deeper into the mortgage paperwork, I found that the down payment was exactly $180,000, with a remaining loan balance of $270,000. The monthly payments hovered around $2,000. That initial down payment had been cleared exactly 3 months ago. The exact same week, Liberty Financial approved the $420,000 loan against my home. The financial math was incredibly straightforward. Take the $420,000, subtract Vanessa's down payment, and you're left with $240,000. I would track down where the rest of that money went soon enough, but for now, this was more than enough proof. Travis had compromised my property, taken out a massive loan from a predatory source, and used those funds to buy a house for a pregnant girlfriend. All the while, he remained married to my daughter, lived under my roof, and actively planned to collect a $500,000 life insurance policy after I was out of the picture. I looked up Vanessa Clark online and found her public social media profile, completely open without any privacy filters. She was a 32-year-old dental hygienist who frequently shared updates about her new home, photos of a nursery being painted, and her growing stomach, using captions like, "Building our family and so incredibly blessed." There weren't any photos of Travis, but she made constant references to her fiancé, Ryan. I assumed that was the alias he used with her, Ryan Bennett. It sounded close enough to Travis to be easy to remember, but different enough to completely mask his identity. Her most recent update from 2 days prior showed a half-assembled crib. The caption read, "Ryan is working so hard to make sure everything is perfectly ready before our little girl arrives. I can't wait to start this next chapter together." Their little girl. Travis was preparing to welcome a daughter with Vanessa while maintaining a marriage with Amanda, living in my house, and actively conspiring to take my assets and my life. I sat there staring at the screen, looking at a woman who had absolutely no idea she was living a complete lie. She believed she had found a good partner and a beautiful future, decorating a nursery funded entirely by stolen money. Meanwhile, my daughter, the woman who chose to marry Travis and moved into my home, was upstairs putting her own son to sleep. Did Amanda actually know about this? Was she aware of Vanessa's existence, the house in Montclair, or the separate life Travis was actively building? Or was she being completely manipulated too, used strictly because of her connection to me, my property, and the money they desperately needed? I wanted so badly to believe Amanda was innocent in this that my own daughter wouldn't help her husband compromise her father's estate while he used the proceeds to finance a home for another woman. But I had seen Amanda's notebook filled with pages of forged signatures, and I had heard her voice in the kitchen that night, talking to Travis about the $400,000 Montclair and how badly they needed it. She clearly knew something. Even if she didn't grasp the entire scope, she was definitely involved. I shut my laptop and lay awake staring at the ceiling. I would track down the remaining $240,000 tomorrow and figure out exactly how deep this betrayal ran. But that night, my mind kept drifting back to that nursery in Montclair. Travis was assembling a crib for a daughter he never mentioned, for a woman who knew him as Ryan and believed they were building a real family. Travis wasn't just stealing my money, he was using it to construct an entirely separate existence. And as for Amanda, I still didn't know the full extent of her awareness. The mistreatment actually started 4 months prior to the fall, beginning so subtly that I barely recognized it at first. Travis started making quiet, pointed comments disguised as simple jokes. "You're starting to slow down, Luke. Maybe it's time to take it easy, old man, before you end up hurting yourself." Before long, the humor completely disappeared. "You're completely useless," he muttered casually one afternoon when my arthritis flared up and I struggled to open a jar. "Just a massive burden," he complained when my truck was down and I asked him to pick up a prescription for me. "Maybe it's time to start looking into an assisted living facility where people can actually take care of you." Amanda never said a single word. She just kept cooking and cleaning, acting as though she completely missed her husband, treating her father like garbage. Next came the financial restrictions. "Luke, I noticed you left your debit card sitting right out on the counter this morning," Travis told me one day, holding it up like a piece of evidence. "That's not safe at all. What if someone breaks in? I'll hold on to it for you, just to keep it secure." I didn't argue because I wanted to avoid a conflict, convincing myself he was just trying to be helpful. But a few days later, I needed some cash for the hardware store and asked Travis to return my card. "How much do you need? I'll just hand you the cash directly. It's much easier that way." He handed me a single $20 bill. After working hard my entire life, saving diligently and owning a home entirely free of debt, I was suddenly being handed an allowance by my son-in-law. The isolation tactics were even more calculated. "Dad, you really shouldn't be driving anymore," Amanda told me, her voice filled with apparent concern. "Your reflexes just aren't what they used to be. What if you get into a serious accident?" My reflexes were perfectly fine. I had driven those exact same streets for 35 years without a single incident, but they took my keys anyway. "Just temporarily," Travis chimed in, "until we can get you checked out by a doctor." That medical appointment never materialized. Then came the phone restrictions. "You're getting hit with a massive amount of spam calls, Luke. Con artists love targeting seniors, so I set up a call blocker for you." Travis made it sound incredibly helpful, but that call blocker meant every incoming call had to be routed through an app on his personal phone. He gained complete control over who could reach me. Michael Costa's number was entirely blocked from getting through, along with my old friends from the construction company. Anyone who might ask how I was doing or notice that something was wrong was completely cut off. I discovered Amanda's notebook while searching for a pen in a kitchen drawer, a small spiral notebook with her handwriting on the cover that read, "Practice." Inside were page after page of my signature, copied over and over again. Luke Henderson, Luke Henderson, Luke Henderson. The early attempts were shaky and noticeably off, but by the end of the notebook, the handwriting was incredibly precise, nearly perfect. It was the exact signature used to mislead the notary, the one that looked entirely legitimate on legal paperwork. She had spent weeks, possibly months, sitting right at the kitchen table practicing my signature while I slept, or while Oliver napped, all to take what belonged to me. It wasn't just Travis, it was Amanda, my own daughter. I placed the notebook right back where I found it without saying a word, simply adding it to the evidence mounting in my mind. The physical intimidation began with minor incidents. Travis would intentionally clip my shoulder whenever we passed each other in the hallway, not hard enough to knock me over, but just enough to throw me off balance. "Sorry about that, Luke. Didn't see you there." Then came a deliberate push in the kitchen while I was pouring a cup of coffee. Travis rushed past, shoving his hand against my back to force his way by. I had to grab the counter to keep from falling, spilling hot coffee everywhere. "Jesus, Luke, are you okay? You really need to watch your balance." Bruises started appearing on my shoulder, along my ribs where I hit the counter, and on my back from a time Travis accidentally collided with me on the stairs, forcing me to grip the railing to steady myself. I documented every single occurrence, saving dates, times, and photos in a password-protected folder on my phone that Travis had no idea existed. Then came the emergency room visit 3 months ago. I was walking down the basement stairs, the exact same steps I recently fell down, carrying a heavy box of holiday decorations Amanda wanted from storage. Travis followed closely behind, claiming he was coming down to help. Halfway down the flight, I felt his hand press firmly against my back, giving me a sudden shove. It wasn't forceful enough to send me airborne, but it completely broke my stride. I tumbled down the remaining 6 steps, twisting my shoulder violently as I grabbed the handrail to arrest the fall, landing hard on the concrete floor. Travis rushed down immediately. "Oh my God, Luke, are you all right? Why were you trying to carry that massive box by yourself? I explicitly told you I'd handle it." Amanda came running down next. "Dad, what happened?" "He took a bad fall," Travis answered, instantly setting the narrative. "I told him not to carry that box because it was far too heavy. They drove me to University Hospital, the exact same facility I would end up back in later. The young doctor examined my shoulder gently. Just deep bruising and a severe muscle strain. You're going to need to rest for a few weeks." "How exactly did this happen?" he asked, looking right at me instead of Travis. "I just lost my balance," I replied. What else could I really say? Accusing my son-in-law of shoving me without an ounce of concrete proof would just make me look confused or paranoid. They could easily use that to place me in a facility for my own safety. The doctor studied my face for a long moment, looked over at Travis, and turned back to me. "Mr. Henderson, if you ever feel unsafe in your home environment, we have excellent resources and people who can assist you." "I'm perfectly fine," I assured him, "just a bit clumsy lately." He clearly didn't buy it, but without me actively asking for help, his hands were tied, and I wasn't ready to make a move just yet. The timing wasn't right. I needed to secure every single piece of evidence to ensure they couldn't simply manipulate their way out of the consequences. Amanda played the part of the devoted, worried daughter flawlessly at the hospital, suggesting they look into an emergency alert button in case I fell when no one was around. But the car ride home was entirely silent and cold. When we walked through the front door, she didn't ask if I needed anything or offer to help me to my room. She simply took Oliver upstairs and shut the door behind her. That was the exact moment I knew she wasn't being misled or manipulated. She was an active, willing participant in everything. 4 months of escalating intimidation, 4 months of collecting documentation, and then, on a Sunday evening, Travis made his final move. "Luke, why don't you join us for dinner tonight? I'm cooking," Travis offered. "We should have a family meeting to discuss a few important things." A family meeting. I knew exactly what that meant. The end game. They were ready to take the final step, and I was entirely prepared for it. That Sunday evening, I set the dining table exactly the way Patricia used to. 4-place settings using the white plates she picked out decades ago, and the silverware we received as a wedding gift. I folded the cloth napkins into neat triangles just like she taught me because it looked more elegant. Oliver's high chair sat at the end of the table, set with his plastic bowl and spoon. I prepared a beef stew using Patricia's personal recipe, the one I'd watched her make 100 times. Beef chuck, carrots, potatoes, and onions, slow-cooked for 8 hours until the rich aroma filled the entire house, making it feel warm and familiar. It almost felt like she was right there with us. Travis didn't get home until 6:30, running late for the 6 o'clock dinner. Amanda had been constantly checking her phone and texting him, growing increasingly anxious as time slipped away. When he finally walked through the door, I instantly picked up the scent of an expensive cologne, entirely different from his usual brand. Right beneath it was a faint floral trace of women's perfume, likely the kind Vanessa wore. "Sorry I'm running behind," he said, his tone completely empty of actual regret. "Got tied up with some work obligations." Work obligations on a Sunday evening. Amanda remained completely silent, standing by the stove and mechanically stirring the gravy long after it was finished. Her shoulders were rigid and her hands shook slightly. She knew I had been watching them closely and clearly sensed something major was about to happen, but she had no idea how much I had actually uncovered. Oliver was the only one completely at ease, as a 2-year-old views everything as an adventure. He banged his spoon against his tray, laughing and shouting, "Papa! Papa!" He had started calling me that a month prior after Amanda taught him. It used to bring a smile to my face, but now it just brought a sharp ache to my chest, knowing the little guy was being raised by parents who were actively plotting against his grandfather. I brought the stew over to the table and began serving everyone. "Smells incredible, Luke," Travis noted as he sat down, making absolutely no effort to help out, just like a customer at a restaurant. "It's Patricia's recipe," I replied. "Right. Well, she always was an excellent cook." He spoke about her in the past tense, as if she were just a footnote in history, rather than the woman I loved and still spoke to every single Sunday at the cemetery. Amanda brought the gravy boat over, sat down, and completely avoided eye contact, keeping her eyes locked on her plate, on Oliver, or on the wall. She refused to look at my face. We ate in absolute silence for several minutes, the only sounds being utensils scraping against plates, Oliver's quiet babbling, and the steady ticking of the wall clock. Travis finally broke the silence. "Luke, there's something important we need to discuss with you." I kept eating without looking up. "It's about your current living situation, your health, and the future of this house." "My health is perfectly fine," I stated. "Well, you aren't getting any younger, and this house," he gestured around the room, "is becoming a lot for one person to manage. All these steep stairs, the ongoing maintenance. Maybe it's time to start thinking about downsizing to a smaller, more manageable place. A specialized senior community, perhaps, where they have structured activities and medical staff on hand, just in case. Just in case. Just in case I took another fall down the stairs, suffered a sudden medical complication, or failed to wake up one morning." Amanda still refused to look at me, focusing entirely on cutting her stew into tiny, precise pieces. She took a long drink of water, her third glass since sitting down. She kept drinking as if trying to wash down the intense anxiety she was feeling. "And what exactly happens to this house?" I inquired, keeping my tone entirely conversational. Travis shot a quick, rehearsed look at Amanda. "Well, naturally, we'd need to sell the property to help finance your long-term care. That's exactly what equity is for, right? Looking after your well-being. Looking after my well-being." After they had already leveraged the property for a $420,000 loan, forged my signature on a quitclaim deed, used my funds to secure a home in Montclair, and established a $500,000 policy on my life, all to look after my well-being. I set my fork down, wiped my mouth with a napkin, folded it neatly, and placed it right beside my plate. "Amanda," I said calmly, "look at me." She didn't budge, keeping her eyes cast downward as her hands trembled violently. "Amanda!" Finally, she raised her head, her eyes completely bloodshot, as if she were on the verge of breaking down. "Do you remember what your mother always used to tell you about honesty and family?" I asked. Her throat tightened as she swallowed hard. "Dad." "She always insisted that family means you never lie to one another, and you never take what isn't yours because blood is supposed to stand for something. Trust is supposed to matter." Travis shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Luke, I really don't think this is the time. She was absolutely right, wasn't she?" I continued, keeping my eyes locked on Amanda. "But clearly family doesn't mean a thing to you anymore, does it?" Amanda's eyes instantly welled up with tears that began spilling down her cheeks. "Dad, please. Just please." "Please what?" "Please just pretend you don't know anything. Please just act like everything is completely fine." She was literally asking me to sit at my own table and smile while they stripped away everything I owned. Travis stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floorboards. "All right, that's quite enough. Sit down." Something in the absolute authority of my voice caught him completely off guard. It was the exact voice I used 35 years ago to settle major disputes, making it instantly clear that I was no longer playing the part of a vulnerable old man. He sank back into his seat. I pulled the manila folder out from beneath my placemat and laid it squarely on the table between us. "Before we discuss my future," I stated, "let's take a look at yours." I opened the folder and presented the first image, the quitclaim deed for Gateway Properties, LLC. Travis's face completely drained of color. I laid out the second photo, the reverse mortgage with Liberty Financial Group for $420,000. Amanda instinctively covered her mouth with both hands. Then I placed the third image down, the $500,000 life insurance policy listing Amanda Henderson as the beneficiary. Dad, her voice cracked completely, I can explain all of this. Next came the fourth photo, Travis and Vanessa together at the cafe in Montclair, holding hands and kissing, followed by the fifth photo, the colonial house on Hillside Avenue, the exact home Vanessa believed her fiancé, Ryan, had purchased for their future family. Finally, the sixth photo, the public property records detailing the $180,000 down payment. I fanned the images out across the table like a deck of cards, unshakable proof of every single move they had made and everything they intended to do. Let's have an honest conversation, I suggested, looking from Travis to Amanda, the daughter I raised to value integrity, who had chosen this disastrous path. Let's talk about Gateway Properties, Liberty Financial, and Vanessa Clark. I slid the folder across the table. Travis stared at it as if it were a live explosive, while Amanda kept her hands clamped over her mouth, her wide eyes darting back and forth between the photos and me. This woman right here, I noted, tapping Vanessa's picture, is 7 months pregnant, living in a beautiful home in Montclair. You told her your name was Ryan, correct? Claimed you were a divorced businessman starting fresh. Travis ground his teeth tightly. Luke, a down payment of $180,000 cleared 3 months ago, the exact same week Liberty Financial finalized the loan against my property. I turned my focus back to Amanda. And by the way, your house technically belongs to Gateway Properties now. It's funny how these corporate setups operate. Dad, I didn't know about that part, Amanda stammered. Didn't know about what? I challenged. The property transfer? Then why were you practicing my signature across an entire notebook? I pulled out another photo showing her practice pages. I truly didn't know about the loan details. Then why were you in the kitchen discussing the $400,000, Montclair, and how badly you needed the money? Her composure completely shattered. That wasn't... Or did you genuinely have no idea about Vanessa? I pushed the photo closer to her. You had no clue your husband took the proceeds from compromising your father's estate to buy a house for his pregnant girlfriend. Amanda grabbed the photo, staring intently as her hands shook uncontrollably. No, this can't be real. Her name is Vanessa Clark, I stated plainly. She's 32, works as a dental hygienist, and believes she's building a life with a man named Ryan Bennett, who's going to be a wonderful father to their daughter. A daughter, Amanda whispered, her voice completely hollow. She's due in December. The nursery is already being painted pink. Amanda slowly turned her head to look at Travis, her movements stiff. You're having a child with another woman. Travis's face flushed a deep, angry red. Amanda, it's not what it looks like. You completely used me, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You used my connection to get to my father, to take his house and his money, all while building a separate life with someone else the entire time. Amanda, just listen to me for a second. I practiced his signature for you, she shouted, slamming her hands down as she stood up. I falsified official documents and helped you steal from my own father, and you took that money to set up a home for your girlfriend. Sit down and shut your mouth, Travis barked, his polite facade dropping entirely as his voice turned cold and aggressive. Sit down right now. No, Amanda shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm not sitting down. Travis lunged across the table, grabbing her wrist tightly, causing her to cry out in pain. I stood up instantly. Take your hands off her and step back. Travis pulled Amanda closer to him. This is between my wife and me, old man. Stay out of it. Let her go. He released his grip, shoving her back into her chair before turning his full aggression toward me. You think you're incredibly smart, don't you? Think you have every single detail figured out? He let out a harsh, ugly laugh. Yeah, I secured the loan. And yeah, I bought the house for Vanessa. And do you want to know why? Because your daughter was far too terrified to take the necessary steps to fix our financial situation. Travis, please stop, Amanda sobbed. We had a solid plan, he shouted, gesturing wildly. A simple plan. You were supposed to have a tragic accident. A bad fall, a severe medical reaction, something completely natural. Amanda would collect the insurance payout, we'd clear our obligations with Giordano, sell this property, and start fresh with a clean slate. But she kept hesitating, claiming there had to be another way. There is no other way. An absolute silence fell over the dining room, broken only by the distant sound of Oliver waking up upstairs, crying from the shouting. Amanda stared at Travis as if looking at a complete stranger. You were actually planning to... Of course I was, he admitted, throwing his arms open. What did you honestly think this was? You think I married you for love. You aren't Vanessa. You aren't nearly as beautiful or as clever. You were strictly a means to an end, a direct path to this house and the money tied to it. I watched the exact moment the final piece of illusion shattered in Amanda's eyes. Every ounce of hope, affection, and denial she had been clinging to completely evaporated. Get out, she said with complete calm. What? Get out of this house right now. Travis just laughed. Legally speaking, this is my house. Gateway Properties, remember? I hold the deed to this place. You're just living here under my roof. Dad! Amanda turned to me, her face pale and filled with absolute desperation. Tell him. Tell him you have copies of everything and can prove the entire setup is fraudulent. I have copies of every single document, I confirmed. The forged signatures, the shell company filings, the loan agreements, the insurance policies. It's more than enough evidence to hold both of you accountable for a very long time. Both of us? Amanda's voice cracked again. You falsified the paperwork, I stated, delivering the plain truth. You acted as a direct accomplice to the entire operation. Every bit of color vanished from her face. But I didn't. I thought... What exactly did you think, Amanda? That you could take what belonged to your father and simply claim ignorance? That practicing my signature was just an innocent exercise? That setting up Gateway Properties was just standard paperwork? Travis stepped toward the basement door. Before I even realized what he was doing, he flung it wide open. It was a door I always kept securely shut, because the stairs were incredibly steep and the handrail had been left loose. All right, here's exactly how this is going to play out, Travis announced, his tone flat, cold, and calculating. Luke is going to have his accident tonight, right now. And Amanda, you are going to help me handle it. Because if you don't, we are both facing massive consequences, and Oliver is going to end up in the state system. Is that what you want for your son? Amanda looked from Travis to me, her eyes settling on the dark, open stairwell. I can simply call the authorities right now and put an end to this, I said, pulling out my phone. Go ahead, and you ruin your grandson's life, Travis countered. Think about Oliver growing up inside the foster care system without a mother or a father, shuffled from home to home. Is that the future you want to hand him? Amanda, I said softly, don't do this. She was trembling violently, crying as her eyes swept past Oliver's toys scattered in the corner and his framed photo on the wall. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Then she moved with sudden speed, planting both hands firmly against my chest and delivering a forceful shove. I didn't resist. I didn't reach out for the doorframe or attempt to break my momentum. I let it happen exactly as I had anticipated. 15 steps, and I counted every single one on the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Concrete, blinding pain, darkness. I could hear Amanda screaming from above. Dad! Oh my God, Dad! Then came Travis's cold voice. She actually did it. You all saw it. She pushed him. No, I didn't mean to. The basement door slammed shut, and the lock clicked firmly into place. Lying there in the shadows, I could hear the muffled sounds of their argument upstairs, Amanda sobbing hysterically while Travis shouted. I distinctly heard him say, "It's over, he's gone." But I wasn't gone, not yet. I lay on the concrete floor, carefully assessing the extent of the damage. A sharp, radiating agony pulsed through my right hip and down my leg. Definitely a severe break that would require surgical pins and months of physical therapy, but nothing life-threatening. Not tonight. My left wrist was fractured for sure, swelling rapidly against my fabric and throbbing with every heartbeat. It had snapped when my instincts forced my arm out to catch myself during the fall, a useless reflex. I should have just relaxed my muscles and let gravity take over, but after 35 years away from the business, you tend to forget how to take a hit properly. My head was spinning, and my vision blurred for a few moments following the impact, but it was starting to clear. Likely a mild concussion. I've handled far worse injuries than this. My mind was still sharp, capable of calculating and finalizing the next steps. My ribs were severely bruised, possibly cracked, making deep breathing incredibly painful, but nothing had punctured my lungs. There was no taste of blood in my mouth, and my breathing remained stable. I wiggled my toes, and both feet responded perfectly. I tested the fingers on my good hand, then the ones on my fractured wrist. Despite the intense pain, the mobility was there. I was going to survive, and that was the single most important detail. It was the one factor Amanda and Travis completely failed to realize. They assumed 15 steps onto a concrete floor would be the definitive end, a clean, straightforward accident, typical for an older individual losing their balance on a steep staircase. But I've made it through scenarios far more dangerous than this, in places significantly darker than my own basement, and I had factored this exact possibility into the plan. Every single step, every potential outcome. From the moment I uncovered that folder inside Travis's car, I knew this would ultimately lead to a direct confrontation. I knew they would try to make a move, and I knew I had to let them believe they had successfully executed their plan. Because the only way to completely dismantle everything they had built was to let them cross that line entirely. Let them deliver the push. Let them leave me down here in the dark while they finalize their plans for tomorrow. And then I bring Giordano into the picture. Upstairs, sharp, panicked footsteps echoed through the ceiling. Travis's muffled voice cut through the floorboards, loud and terrified. "What do we do? What do we do?" Then came Amanda, crying hysterically. Is he? I don't know. I'm not going down there," Travis snapped. "We have to go check." "No, we wait," Travis said, his voice tightening. If this worked, calling 911 right now looks way too suspicious. We wait until morning, 7 a.m. We go down, discover him, and call for help. We were asleep. We didn't hear a thing. He must have gone down to look for something and took a terrible spill. A tragic accident. Travis, Amanda, listen to me. This is it. This is exactly what we planned. We stick to the story. You find him in the morning. You dial 911. You try CPR, but it's too late. He was down here all night. Do you understand me? A heavy silence followed before Amanda's weak voice trembled through. What if he's still breathing? He won't be, Travis replied with cold certainty. A fall like that would kill anyone, especially a guy his age. Even if he's breathing right now, he'll be gone by morning. The basement, cold, shock, internal complications. Nature will take its course. Another silence settled in before the footsteps finally moved away. A door slammed shut upstairs. In the distance, Oliver started crying, and Amanda's voice filtered down, trying to soothe him. Shh, baby, it's okay. Mommy's here. I lay there on the cold floor, listening to my daughter comfort her child, while her husband meticulously planned how to explain away her father's death. Using my good hand, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen illuminated the darkness, unbroken. Patricia always told me I needed a case. The digital clock read 7:30 p.m. It had been exactly 30 minutes since the fall, though it felt like an eternity. I scrolled down to Michael's number, the only name that mattered, the only person I needed. I hit dial. It rang twice. "Luke?" His gravelly voice answered, thick with surprise. "Is that you?" "It's time, Michael." The line went completely quiet. He understood instantly. We had discussed this exact possibility 3 years ago at Patricia's funeral, right when I told him Amanda was moving in and mentioned the unsettling feeling I couldn't shake. Back then, he reminded me that certain debts never expire and promised that the moment I called, he'd be there. Where? Woodside Avenue, inside the house. How bad are you hit? Bad enough? I shifted slightly, and a blinding wave of agony flared through my hip. I ground my teeth to swallow the groan. But I can wait. I need you to bring Salvatore. There was a long, heavy pause. Are you certain? Bringing Giordano into this... They took out a loan using his group, Liberty Financial. $420,000. They forged my signature, used the funds to buy a house for a girlfriend, and stole my home out from under me. They have to face the consequences. Jesus Christ. All right, we'll be there tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. sharp. Can you hold out until then? I glanced at the screen. It was 7:31 p.m. Nearly 11 hours. I can hold out. Luke? Michael's voice softened slightly. What exactly happened? I closed my eyes, picturing Amanda's face right before she pushed me. The tears, the stammered apologies, and the fear for her son that drove her to choose Travis over me. My daughter happened. I'm sorry, brother. Don't be. Just get here. Bring Salvatore. I want him to see exactly what his money bought. We're on our way. Hang tight. The call cut out. I set the phone down beside me and rested my head against the freezing concrete. In the corner, the furnace hummed its steady tune, and Patricia's clock kept ticking on the wall, marking time just as it had since she brought it home 30 years ago. Above me, the house grew entirely still. The footsteps stopped. The voices vanished. And by 9 p.m., the silence was absolute. They had gone to bed, likely pretending to sleep, waiting out the darkness, counting down until 7 a.m. when they could walk downstairs and discover my body. I counted the hours as they dragged by. 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., midnight. The sharp pain in my hip eventually dulled into a steady, throbbing white noise, brutal but manageable. I had learned how to coexist with pain a long time ago, knowing how to breathe through it and let it exist without letting it break me. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. My thoughts drifted to Patricia, wondering what she would say if she could see me now. She'd probably call me stubborn, reminding me of the difference between being right and being smart, or arguing that vengeance and justice aren't the same thing. But deep down, she would understand. She had been married for 35 years to a man who made a living, making problems disappear. She knew exactly what I was capable of, who I used to be, and who I could still be when backed into a corner. 4 a.m. 5 a.m. The clock kept ticking and my phone battery held at 60%, more than enough. The biting cold kept me sharp, alert, and focused on the countdown. At 5:45 a.m., I caught the faint sound of a vehicle pulling up outside. The engine cut out quietly, and the doors closed, with a soft, muffled thud. Michael and Giordano, right on time. I waited in the dark, 11 hours. I had counted every single minute. The sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps woke me. It wasn't Amanda, and it wasn't Travis. I must have drifted off sometime after 5 a.m. After 11 hours of counting minutes, managing the pain and fighting the freezing cold, my body had simply given out. Just a brief lapse, but it was enough. The footsteps came down from upstairs, multiple people moving quickly but quietly. It was a highly professional stride, the walk of men who weren't trying to hide their presence but had no intention of waking the household up just yet. Then came Michael's low, commanding voice, "Clear the rooms, keep it quiet." More footsteps echoed above as doors were systematically opened. Then Michael's voice sounded much closer, right at the top of the basement stairs. "Luke, you down there?" I tried to answer, but my throat was painfully dry and tight. The sound that came out was a rough, gravelly rasp. "Down here." The basement door swung open, and bright light flooded down the stairwell. Michael's silhouette appeared at the top, backlit by the kitchen lights. He moved down the steps rapidly, taking them 2 at a time. "Jesus, Luke?" He dropped to one knee beside me, placing his hands on my shoulder and neck to check my pulse. "Hold on, brother. We've got you." "You took your time," I managed to rasp out. A faint smile touched his face. "Exactly 11 hours, just like you said." He pulled out a small penlight, checking my pupils. "Definitely a concussion. Where else are you hit?" "Hip, wrist, ribs." He began assessing my injuries with careful precision. Michael had field medic training from the old days, knowing exactly how to check for fractures and stabilize a patient. "Can you wiggle your toes?" "Yeah." "Fingers?" "Most of them." "Good. That's a good sign." He pulled a bottle of water from his jacket and gave me a few careful sips. Sal is upstairs with 4 guys. They're securing the house. Amanda and Travis are still in bed. We came in completely quiet, using the spare key I kept from years ago. They have no idea we're here. I nodded, attempting to shift upward, but Michael held me down gently. Don't move until we get your wrist and hip splinted. Just talk to me. Tell me exactly what happened. So lying there on the concrete floor with the sound of quiet pacing directly over our heads, I laid it all out for him. I told him about the forged deed, Gateway Properties, the $420,000 reverse mortgage taken from Giordano's front company, Liberty Financial, the life insurance policy, Vanessa in Montclair, and Travis's unborn daughter. And I told him about Amanda, how she practiced my signature in her notebook, how she stood at that dining table, and how, when Travis threatened her with Oliver, she chose her son over her father and pushed me down those steps. Michael's expression turned to stone. Your own daughter? Yeah. And they used Sal's money to finance it, forging my name through his operation, stealing directly from him. They think I'm dead right now, assuming they can use the insurance payout to settle the debt before he ever uncovers the fraud. Michael stood up, his face grim. Sal needs to hear this firsthand. He turned and walked back up the stairs. A low, intense murmur of voices filtered down, followed by the heavy, rhythmic thud of shoes descending the wooden steps. Salvatore Giordano was 73 years old, his silver hair brushed straight back. Even at 6 a.m., he wore an immaculate, expensive suit, his reading glasses resting on a chain around his neck. He looked exactly like a kindly grandfather, which he was, but he also ran half the organized crime operations in North New Jersey. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looking down at me before his eyes drifted to the manila folder resting on the concrete, its contents and photos scattered across the floor. Luke Henderson, he began, his voice calm and measured. Michael tells me we share a significant problem. We do. They leveraged this house for a $420,000 loan, using your front company behind my back. They forged my signature, established a shell company to take the title, and used the property as collateral. Giordano's jaw tightened just a fraction, the only visible sign of his anger. And where are these people who think they can play games with my capital? Upstairs, second bedroom on the right side of the hall. He turned toward the stairs, calling up to someone out of sight. Bring them down, both of them, right now. Instantly, loud, chaotic footsteps erupted through the ceiling. Doors were kicked open, followed by sudden shouting. Travis's voice boomed down. Who the hell are you? Get out of my house! A dull thud cut him off, followed by the sound of a struggle, more shouting, and Amanda screaming. Upstairs, Oliver began to cry, completely terrified. Amanda! My baby! Let me hold my baby! One of Giordano's men intervened coldly. Ma'am, sit down, immediately! Oliver's crying grew louder for a moment before fading away as someone carried him to another room, completely removing him from the situation. More shifting sounds followed, and then came the slow walk down the basement stairs. Travis came down first, his hands bound tightly behind his back with plastic zip ties. He was wearing nothing but boxers and a t-shirt, his hair disheveled and his eyes wide with panic. One of Giordano's men, a massive, expressionless bald guy, held him firmly by the arm. Amanda followed closely behind in her nightgown, barefoot and similarly bound, escorted by another man. Tears were streaming down her face, smearing the mascara from the night before across her cheeks. Then they saw me. Travis's eyes nearly popped out of his head. No, you're supposed to be... Dead? I finished the thought for him, my voice flat. Sorry to disappoint you. Amanda's knees completely buckled, forcing the guard holding her to lift her weight. Dad, oh my God, Dad, I'm so incredibly sorry. I didn't mean to... Didn't mean to what? I asked, my voice entirely empty of emotion. Didn't mean to push me, or didn't mean for me to survive the fall? She just sobbed, unable to find an answer. Giordano pulled 2 folding chairs over from the laundry area, setting them up directly facing me. He looked at Travis, then at Amanda. Sit. They sat down immediately. Travis was completely pale, sweating through his shirt, while Amanda couldn't stop weeping. Giordano remained standing, turning his attention to Michael. Get an ambulance en route. Luke needs proper medical care, but hold them for a moment. He turned back to face the couple. First, we're going to have an actual conversation. Michael handed the folder over to Giordano. The photos, the records, and every bit of evidence I had spent months gathering. Giordano reviewed the pages in methodical silence, laying each document out carefully on an old workbench near the wall. The quitclaim deed, the reverse mortgage application, the insurance policy, and the photos of Vanessa. When he finished, he fixed his gaze on Travis. You secured a loan through my Operation Liberty Financial Group for $420,000, using this house as collateral. Travis opened his mouth, closed it, and opened it again. I can explain everything. You forged Luke Henderson's signature, committing a massive fraud against my company, against him, and against the state of New Jersey. Giordano's voice never rose, and it didn't need to. You used my capital to purchase a residence for a girlfriend while plotting to defraud an insurance policy on your wife's father, and you honestly assumed I wouldn't uncover it. Mr. Giordano, please listen to me. Be quiet. Giordano turned his attention to Amanda. And you assisted him. I don't know how much you knew about Vanessa, but you certainly knew about the loan, the deed, and the insurance policy. He held up her practice notebook. You forged these signatures. Amanda offered a microscopic nod, tears streaming down her face. Lying on the floor, I watched as Salvatore Giordano evaluated my daughter and her husband with the cold, detached gaze of a man checking inventory. He pulled up a chair and sat down to face them. Let's talk about the $420,000 you owe me. Giordano didn't need to shout. Sitting on that cheap folding chair like it was a throne, his hands crossed and his face completely blank, he exuded decades of absolute authority. His expression made it clear that nothing they said could surprise him, but it could certainly disappoint him, and that was far more dangerous. He walked over to the workbench, systematically laying out the evidence I had collected over months, without looking at either of them as he calculated the details. The quitclaim deed, Gateway Properties LLC, the fraudulent signatures, the reverse mortgage, the life insurance policy with the forged auto-deduct authorization, the photos of a pregnant Vanessa, the real estate records showing the down payment, and the bank statements highlighting the timeline of the transfers. He finally looked up. Travis Bennett, where is my money? Travis swallowed hard. Mr. Giordano, I can explain. I asked where my money is, not for an explanation. The house. We put it into the house. Which house? Giordano asked, gesturing around the damp basement. This house belongs entirely to Luke Henderson. It doesn't belong to you, and it doesn't belong to Gateway Properties. The deed you filed is a complete fraud. We were entirely planning to pay you back. With what? With the insurance payout. Once Luke passed away, Giordano's voice remained perfectly level and quiet. You borrowed $420,000 against a stolen property under the name of my company, leveraging my reputation. Do you have any concept of what that actually means? Travis's face turned a sickly shade of gray. Yes, sir. No, I really don't think you do. Giordano turned to Amanda. Tell me about the signatures. Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. It was my idea. Speak up. It was my idea. The signatures. I spent weeks practicing them in that notebook. Show me. One of Giordano's men handed over the spiral notebook. Giordano flipped through the pages, examining the progression of my signature as it grew steadier, more confident, and ultimately identical to my own. You executed these? Yes. Why? Amanda's hands were shaking so violently that the zip ties cut into her wrists. Travis told me we desperately needed the money for Oliver to build a better life. He said my father's house was just sitting here with all this equity going to waste, and that leaving it to an old man living alone made no sense. So you stole it. I thought, her voice broke completely, I thought it was just a standard loan that we would pay back. I had no idea about Vanessa, and I didn't know about the insurance until much later. But you eventually found out about the insurance policy. Yes, and you didn't stop it. A long silence followed before she whispered, No, I didn't stop it. Suddenly Travis snapped. She's lying. She knew absolutely everything from day one. The entire plan was hers. She wanted that insurance payout. She wanted him gone, and I was just following her lead. Shut up. Amanda hissed. You told me it was the only option we had left. You said if we didn't do this, Oliver would grow up in poverty. You said, I told you exactly what you wanted to hear, Travis yelled, lunging forward in his chair until the guard behind him slammed him back down by his shoulders. You wanted this. You practiced the signatures. You falsified the documents. And you pushed him down those stairs because you told me if we didn't, we'd both end up in prison and Oliver would be taken by the state. I went along with it because deep down, this is exactly what you wanted to do. Giordano just sat back, letting them scream and tear into each other like animals in a cage. Once they finally ran out of breath, completely exhausted and weeping, he spoke up again. The life insurance policy. Who signed Luke Henderson's name on the application? Travis lowered his head. I did. You forged it? Yes. And the authorization to automatically pull the premiums from his personal account? That was me too. The laptop? Giordano nodded to his tech specialist, who stepped forward with Travis's open computer, the same one where I had uncovered the Dad Project folder. We pulled the search history going back 6 months, the specialist reported. Giordano read the log, his expression unchanging while his eyes turned completely cold. Read it out loud. The technician cleared his throat. How long does a life insurance payout take after an accidental death? Do life insurance companies investigate accidental falls? Elderly accidental fall statistics. How to make a fall look accidental. Reverse mortgage foreclosure timeline. Elderly abuse versus accidental injury. With every single search term read aloud, Amanda's face grew progressively paler. Travis, that wasn't... Travis started to speak. Giordano held up a single hand, cutting him off. Silence. The dates on these searches begin 6 months ago, during the exact same week you filed the fraudulent deed. That means you were planning this entire scenario from the very start. You stole the house, defaulted on the loan, used my capital to finance a home for a girlfriend, and planned a fatal accident to cash in a $500,000 policy. Last night, you put that plan into action, and you had your wife push him down these stairs. Travis opened his mouth but closed it immediately. The digital footprint was right in front of him. There was absolutely nothing left to say. Giordano turned back toward me. Despite the brutal throbbing in my hip and my swollen wrist, I hadn't missed a single word, watching every second of their mutual destruction. Luke, Giordano said, you have an incredible amount of patience and intelligence. You let them completely expose themselves. Now the decision is entirely yours. He shut the folder and laid it down. What decision? How do you want me to handle them? The basement fell into an absolute hush, save for the hum of the furnace, the ticking clock, Amanda's quiet sobbing, and Travis's heavy breathing. Everyone was waiting for my verdict. While I had been waiting in the dark, Giordano's team had been incredibly thorough. Michael stepped forward, consulting his phone notes. We inspected the Montclair residence, spoke with the neighbors, and verified the woman's identity. Vanessa Clark, I rasped from the floor. 32, dental hygienist, 7 months pregnant. Exactly, Michael confirmed, scrolling through his screen. She knows Travis is Ryan Bennett, believing he's a divorced IT consultant with a solid income who travels constantly for business, which explains his frequent absences. Travis kept his eyes locked on the floor, unable to look at anyone. The property was acquired 4 months ago, Michael continued, for $450,000, a down payment of $180,000, with a remaining mortgage of $270,000, putting the payments around $2,000 a month. Giordano glared at Travis. Using $180,000 of my capital to buy a home for a girlfriend while you have a wife, live under Luke's roof, and actively plan to defraud both of us. It wasn't like that, Travis muttered. Then tell me exactly what it was like. Silence. Michael continued reading. We tracked where the remaining loan balance went. Bank records indicate multiple transfers to casinos, online gambling operations, and poker rooms in Atlantic City. How much? Giordano asked. $150,000 gone in under 3 months. Amanda's head snapped up. What? Your husband has a severe gambling problem, Michael stated flatly, simply presenting the facts. Mainly online poker and sports betting. He was constantly trying to chase his losses and dug himself into a massive hole. This loan was intended to cover his debts so he could attempt a fresh start with Vanessa. You told me we needed the money for Oliver, Amanda whispered, staring at Travis in disbelief for his future, to build a life. Travis said absolutely nothing. The remaining 90,000, Michael noted, was blown on a luxury lifestyle. Purchases at 3 different jewelry boutiques in Montclair for women's jewelry, an engagement ring, necklaces, and earrings, all bought for Vanessa over the last 3 months, plus a lease on a luxury Lexus SUV for $500 a month, registered under the name Ryan Bennett at the Montclair address, along with high-end travel, hotels, and restaurants. Michael looked up from his screen. You were establishing a completely separate identity in life, while waiting to completely drain the assets of your actual family. Giordano's tech specialist chimed in next. We contacted Barry Simmons, the insurance agent in West Orange. He verified the policy and distinctly remembered Travis coming in 6 months ago. He noted that Travis brought an elderly gentleman along who posed as Luke Henderson and signed all the paperwork. The agent had no reason to suspect fraud. The ID presentation cleared, and the signature appeared genuine. Except Luke Henderson never stepped foot in that office, Giordano observed. Correct, sir. Travis hired or coerced an older actor to play the part. We're still tracking down exactly who that individual was. I turned that over in my mind, wondering who Travis had managed to convince to play me. Likely some desperate actor or someone who badly needed the cash. It didn't matter now. The policy was an absolute fraud, and that was more than enough. The timeline, Michael stated, runs back 6 months to when this entire operation began. He laid out the sequence clearly, matching dates to documents. Month 1. Travis and Amanda filed the fraudulent quitclaim deed, registering the transfer of the house to Gateway Properties, LLC, with the county. Month 2. They apply for the reverse mortgage through Liberty Financial Group for $420,000 using the forged deed. Month 3. The loan is approved and paid out. $180,000 goes immediately toward the down payment on the Montclair property under Vanessa Clark's name. Month 4. Travis burns through $150,000 in Atlantic City and online poker rooms within 6 weeks, desperately trying to recoup his losses. Month 5. Travis secures the $500,000 life insurance policy using a double at Barry Simmons' office, setting up automatic premium withdrawals from Luke's checking account. Month 6. The emotional, financial, and physical mistreatment escalates to create an illusion of failing health, setting the stage for last night's accident. Michael put his phone away. A 6-month plan meticulously calculated, setting every single piece on the board before making the final move. Giordano turned his focus back to Amanda. Did you have any awareness regarding Vanessa, the gambling, or the lifestyle he was funding? Amanda shook her head violently, tears pouring down her face. No, I swear to God. Travis told me we needed the money for Oliver's medical expenses and childcare. He said my father was just being stubborn by holding on to this house, that the equity was going to waste, and that we could clear the mortgage before anyone ever found out. And the insurance, her voice broke completely. He showed me the policy 2 months ago, claiming it was just a financial safety net in case my dad passed away naturally. He said plenty of families do it. I had no idea he forged the application or brought in a double. But you knew exactly what was happening last night, I spoke up, marking my first comment since Michael finished his report. During dinner, when I laid everything out on the table. You knew everything then. Amanda looked over at me. Yes. And you still delivered the push. He said, she sobbed, completely breathless. He said if I didn't do it, we'd both go to prison and Oliver would be taken away by the state. He convinced me it was the only way to safeguard our son. So you made your choice. I'm so sorry. You chose Travis over me. You chose a life built entirely on lies and theft instead of just telling the truth. And you actually pushed your own father down a flight of stairs, all because a man you'd been married to for 4 years told you it was your only way out. She had absolutely nothing left to say. Giordano stood up and walked back over to the workbench, looking down at the fanned-out evidence. Vanessa's photos, the gambling losses, the luxury receipts, the loan documents, the forged signatures, and the insurance policy. $420,000, he said quietly. Travis, You stole from my company. You stole from Luke. You lived a total lie with Vanessa. You manipulated your wife, and you planned a fatal incident to collect an insurance policy. And the moment the setup falls apart, you immediately try to lay the entire blame on Amanda. Travis finally looked up, his voice desperate. I'll pay it back. I can make it right. With what? Your girlfriend's house? Your gambling profits? Or the luxury vehicle you can't even afford? There was no reply. Giordano turned back toward me. Amanda forged the paperwork, and she was a willing participant in taking the title to the house. She was part of the plan. But Travis was the mastermind behind the entire operation, exploiting her guilt, her anxiety, and her dedication to her son to make her believe she was protecting Oliver when she was really just protecting him. He was dead on. I had watched the whole thing play out, seeing how Amanda had been manipulated. But manipulation doesn't erase a choice. She still sat at that table and practiced my signature. She still falsified the records. And when the moment came, she still delivered the push. The mask on Travis's lies had been ripped away, and while Amanda had been his tool, that push was entirely her own action. Amanda completely fell apart. Her hands shook so violently that the plastic zip ties bit deeper into her skin, her breath catching in short, rapid gasps before expanding into a hollow, agonizing sob, the sound of someone realizing they have entirely ruined their life and can never go back. I did it, she choked out through her tears. Everything. I falsified the records. I practiced his signature for weeks. She struggled for air before continuing. I put shellfish in his coffee twice, just to make him ill, to make it appear like his health was steadily declining. The emergency room visit from 3 months ago flashed through my mind, the hives, my swollen throat, and the doctor inquiring if I had eaten seafood. I had said no, but Amanda had prepared my coffee that morning, slipping something into the mug when I wasn't looking. She was testing the waters, trying to build a medical history of failing health to ensure my accidental death wouldn't raise any red flags. Inside the Dad Project folder, Michael noted, pulling up the file on Travis's laptop to show Giordano, she laid out a complete timeline, an inventory of his personal assets and contact information for an elder law attorney. She was actively preparing to file for full guardianship to declare him legally incapacitated. Amanda nodded, unable to control her weeping. Travis insisted it was our only option, that my dad was too stubborn to ever help us out, and that we had to take full control for Oliver's sake. For Oliver's sake, I said from the floor, or for your own? She looked at me, her face completely haggard, and her eyes red. Both. I don't know, I thought. Her voice cracked. When I was growing up, you were never around. You worked 70 hours a week, and my mom had to raise me entirely on her own. I was angry back then, and I'm still angry now. So you decided to steal everything I owned. I felt like you owed us. You have this completely paid-off property, substantial savings, and zero financial worries, while we were literally drowning in debt. Oliver's medical bills, student loans, and Travis's... She caught herself, realizing what she was about to admit. Gambling debts. Travis finished for her with absolute bitterness. Go ahead and say it. Tell them how you found out about my gambling 6 months ago, and how you realized I owed money to dangerous people who would come after us if I didn't settle up. Tell them how you were the one who suggested leveraging your father's property. Amanda's face turned completely white. That's not... It was entirely you. You brought the idea to me. You said your father was old, lonely, and wasting the equity in this house. You said we could take out a mortgage, clear my debts, and he'd never have a clue. This whole setup was your design. Because you told me we were going to lose Oliver, Amanda screamed. Your bookies threatened to hurt our son. Because you desperately wanted an excuse to believe it. You wanted a reason to justify taking what you believed you deserved. Giordano just let them shout, watching as they completely tore away whatever residual dignity they had left. When they finally slumped back, completely drained, he spoke up. The boy, Oliver, where is he right now? One of his men replied immediately. Upstairs, sir, entirely safe. We have a guard watching over him. Good. Giordano turned his attention back to Amanda. You intentionally slipped shellfish into your father's food, knowing full well he had a severe reaction, completely indifferent to whether it could have killed him. You falsified official legal documents, stole his home, and helped coordinate a fatal accident for insurance fraud. And when your husband told you to push him down those stairs, you went right along with it. Not because you lacked a choice, but because you chose your son over your father, and a life built on theft over the truth. Amanda offered a faint, defeated nod. I can't go to prison. Oliver needs his mother. Giordano turned to face me. Luke, what do you want here? I can make this entire problem vanish completely. Both of them. Vanessa will never know. Oliver will never know. And they will simply disappear. This house returns to you with a clean slate. I knew exactly what he meant, understanding perfectly what disappearing stood for in his world. For a fraction of a second, I actually entertained the thought, considering letting Salvatore Giordano resolve the issue the way he always did. But then I looked at Amanda, my daughter, the woman who had just pushed me down a flight of stairs, but also the little girl I used to push on the swings, the child who fell asleep on my shoulder, and the toddler who called me Papa before she ever learned to be disappointed in her father. No, I told him. Not that. There's a better way to handle this. Giordano offered a slow nod, as if he had anticipated that exact response. Then here is exactly how this is going to go. He laid out the terms clearly and precisely, like a standard business contract, which in his world it absolutely was. The deed to this property is transferred back to Luke Henderson today. Gateway Properties, LLC, is completely dissolved, and any legal claims against this house are rendered entirely null and void. As for the outstanding loan of $420,000, you secured those funds through absolute fraud. Factor in the interest and penalties, and you're now looking at a flat debt of $600,000. Amanda gasped loudly, and Travis turned completely translucent. You will remit a monthly payment of $5,000 every single month for the next 120 months. That is exactly 10 years. If you separate or divorce, which I fully expect you will, that balance splits into $2,500 a month from each of you individually. We don't have that kind of... Travis started to protest. Figure it out, Giordano cut him off coldly. Get a job. Get 2 jobs, or 3. I don't care what you have to do, but that payment arrives on time every single month. If you miss a single deadline, I will collect what is owed through alternative means, and I guarantee you will not enjoy my methods of collection. He turned toward Travis, his expression colder than ice. You have exactly 60 days to go to Vanessa and tell her the truth. Your real name, your actual wife, everything. If you don't tell her, I will. And I'll personally make sure she knows exactly who she's dealing with. Then he shifted his focus directly to Amanda. And you have 60 days to get a divorce. File the paperwork. Finalize the proceedings. If you don't, the balance doubles to $1.2 million, and I'll personally hand everything over to the authorities. Let them settle it their way. Oliver stays with you, Giordano told Amanda firmly, provided you follow through, clear the payments, and maintain your distance from Luke. But if I get even a whisper that the boy isn't being properly cared for, he'll be placed with family services, and you'll be left with absolutely nothing. As for Luke, Giordano added, looking over at me, he retains the right to report this to the police at any given moment. If you miss a single payment, or if you violate any part of these terms, he holds all the physical evidence and documentation. The only time that file gets destroyed is when the entire balance is officially cleared. He stood up, pulling a legal document from his coat pocket that had clearly been drawn up by his attorneys overnight. Sign it, both of you. This is a promissory note. It is legally binding and witnessed by Michael. If you default, I'll take legal action, and I guarantee I will win. From that point on, we play strictly by my rules. Travis signed the paper, his hand trembling uncontrollably. Amanda followed right after him, barely able to keep a steady grip on the pen. One final thing, Giordano added, his voice dropping to a quiet whisper. As long as this debt is active, if Luke Henderson passes away under any suspicious circumstances whatsoever, I will come looking for you, both of you, and I will come looking for every single person you care about. Vanessa, Oliver, your mother, anyone connected to you. Do we have an understanding?" They understood completely. In the distance outside, sirens began to cut through the quiet morning air. Michael had finally called for medical assistance. The paramedics arrived down the basement shortly after, moving with efficient professionalism. They checked my vitals, stabilized my broken hip and fractured wrist, and carefully loaded me onto a stretcher. As they carried me up the steps, I found myself looking at the exact same 15 stairs I had counted on the way down. I caught one last glimpse of Amanda. She was holding Oliver tightly while the 2-year-old cried, completely confused and terrified by the chaos. Amanda's composure was entirely gone, her face pale and her eyes swollen from weeping. She whispered a single word, "Dad." I looked away, feeling absolutely nothing inside. I spent the next 3 days at University Hospital, undergoing a grueling 4-hour surgery to secure my broken hip with titanium pins and place a heavy cast on my left wrist. Due to the concussion, they kept me under close observation in a quiet, private room. Michael visited me once every day, bringing along books he knew I'd never actually read. For the most part, we just sat together, in silence, the kind of comfort only lifelong friends truly understand. Giordano sent an expensive arrangement of flowers with a brief note that read, "Get well soon." The nursing staff thought it was a lovely gesture, but I knew the hidden message behind it. Our arrangement is locked in. Do your part. The nurse handling my floor was named Jennifer Walsh. She happened to be the exact same nurse who had treated me 3 months prior, during my first emergency room visit for that accidental fall. She recognized my face immediately, looking over my chart before fixing her eyes on me. "Another fall, Mr. Henderson?" "Basement stairs," I told her flatly. The handrail gave out. She didn't believe a word of it. I could see the skepticism written all over her face. But there wasn't much she could do without me actively seeking help or filing charges. To her, I was just another elderly patient experiencing a string of unfortunate mishaps. "You really need to be more careful," she murmured softly. It was her quiet way of saying she knew something was deeply wrong, but her hands were tied unless I spoke up. "I will be," I replied, making it clear that the situation had already been handled. Amanda tried calling twice on the first day and 4 times on the second. I didn't answer a single call, letting them go straight to voicemail and deleting them without listening to the messages. On the 3rd day, she showed up at the hospital in person. The nurse asked if I was open to seeing her, and I almost said no. Part of me knew I should have turned her away, but instead I relented. "Let her in," I said. "Just this once." She walked into the room looking completely exhausted, her hair tied back carelessly and her face entirely clear of makeup, wearing the exact same clothes from 2 days ago. Oliver wasn't with her, likely staying with a sitter. In her hands, she clutched a folder containing the initial divorce paperwork. "Dad," she started, but stopped immediately, struggling to find the right words to say. "You have exactly 5 minutes," I told her. "I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness," she whispered. "I just need you to understand that Travis completely manipulated me. He weaponized my fear for Oliver and used my lingering resentment toward you. I genuinely believed I was doing what was necessary to protect my son. You thought you could strip your own father of everything he owned and call it protection," I countered, her face contorted with grief. "I felt entirely cornered, Dad. You sat at your kitchen table practicing my signature for months. That isn't being cornered, Amanda. That is a calculated choice. Dad, please." "You intentionally put something in my food twice, sending me to the emergency room just to establish a medical paper trail so my eventual passing would look completely natural. That isn't manipulation. That is an active decision you made yourself." She began to weep openly now. "He told me we were going to lose absolutely everything, and you chose to believe him because deep down you wanted a reason to. You've held on to resentment toward me since you were a teenager, and this plan gave you the permission you needed to act on it." "Because you were never there," she suddenly erupted, letting out years of buried frustration. My mother had to raise me entirely on her own because you were working 70 or 80 hours every single week. You'd come home so exhausted, you'd fall asleep right at the dinner table. I needed a father around, but all I ever got from you was a paycheck. I worked myself to the bone to ensure you had a life I was completely denied, I told her, my voice low. I did it so you could go to college, have actual opportunities, and never have to grow up in the harsh world I came from. I didn't care about opportunities, Dad. I just needed you. A heavy silence settled over the room, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor and the distant sounds of the hospital corridor. Why didn't you just come to me and ask for help? I finally asked. If it was about the money, I would have handed it to you. Because I was deeply ashamed, she admitted, lowering her head, and because I was angry. I wanted you to feel the weight of all those years you spent at work instead of being there for me. And there it was, the unvarnished truth. It wasn't about Travis's manipulation or feeling cornered. It was pure, unadulterated resentment that had been waiting for the perfect excuse to surface. So you decided to take my house, my assets, and my life. I never intended for things to go that far, but that is exactly where it went. And when Travis told you to push me down those stairs, you did it. Not because you lacked a choice, but because when forced to choose between your resentment and your father, you chose the anger. She had no defense left, standing there silently crying while clutching the unfiled divorce papers. Clear the debt, I told her quietly. $2,500 a month for the next 10 years. Focus on raising Oliver the right way, keep him far away from all of this, and stay away from me. Dad, that is the extent of what I require from you. The monthly financial records and complete distance. She offered a slight nod. I'll make sure the payments are on time every month, I promise. A promise, I noted dryly. Just like the promise you made when you were 10 years old to look after me when I grew older. Look how beautifully that turned out. She turned and left the room, taking her paperwork, her tears, and her promises with her. I watched her go, feeling entirely hollow inside. There was no lingering anger or sorrow, just an empty space where my daughter used to be. 3 days later, I was officially discharged with a walker and a prescription for pain management that I had no intention of taking. Michael picked me up and drove me to a brand new apartment, a smaller, safer place on the 3rd floor with a working elevator and absolutely no basement. 2 months after leaving the hospital, I put the Woodside Avenue property on the market. The real estate agent tried to convince me to hold off, adjusting her jacket as she delivered the pitch. The market is starting to recover. If you can hold out until spring, you could easily clear another 30 or 40,000. I signed the contract that very afternoon. I didn't bother explaining to her that I couldn't spend another night under that roof, that I couldn't walk past the basement door without counting those 15 steps in my mind, or sit at the kitchen table without seeing the look on Amanda's face right before she made her choice. The house was purchased by a young couple from Jersey City who were expecting their first child and talking about transforming the basement into a play area. I wished them the absolute best, drove away, and never looked back. My new home was a quiet one-bedroom apartment near Branch Brook Park. Walking required a cane now, making the elevator essential. Dr. Alan Fletcher assured me my hip was healing well, but it would never completely return to how it used to be. Neither would I. Physical therapy became my routine, 3 times a week at a clinic on Bloomfield Avenue. My therapist, Dot, was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who pushed me through exercises that regularly brought me to the verge of tears, but I never missed a session, giving every bit of effort I had left. "You're an incredibly stubborn man," Dot observed one afternoon as I struggled through a set of leg lifts. "I'm 70 years old," I told her. "Stubbornness is about the only asset I have left." She offered a warm laugh. 70 isn't old. My mother is 86 and still manages a 2-mile walk every single morning. She adjusted the resistance band around my ankle. "You've got plenty of years left, Henderson. Don't waste them sitting around feeling sorry for yourself." I didn't tell her that pity wasn't the issue. I just felt completely empty. 4 months after the fall, Travis was taken into custody. Michael called to deliver the news, explaining that an unresolved warrant from 2019 regarding a real estate fraud operation in Atlantic City had surfaced. It was the kind of charge that stays buried if you keep a low profile, but comes to light the moment people start digging into your history. And Giordano's people had dug deep. "He's looking at 8 years," Michael shared over coffee at our usual spot. "With good behavior, he might see a release in 5. Vanessa had walked away the day after his arrest, taking the baby and relocating back to Pennsylvania with a completely new phone number. The colonial house on Hillside Avenue, the home funded by my compromised property, was sitting vacant with a real estate sign on the lawn. "Good," I said simply. Michael studied me over the rim of his cup. "Are you getting any actual sleep lately, Luke?" "That isn't an answer." I looked out at the steady flow of traffic on Bloomfield Avenue. "I sleep perfectly fine, Michael. My mind just doesn't dream anymore." Amanda's first letter arrived 3 weeks after I settled into the apartment. I recognized the neat, careful penmanship immediately, the exact style Patricia had taught her when she was 7 years old. For a brief second, I considered tossing it into the trash, unopened, but I didn't. "Dear Dad, I know I have absolutely no right to send you this. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or even a response, but I need you to know that I am keeping my promise. The financial restitution is being made on time every month, $2,500. I'm currently working 2 jobs, spending my mornings at a dental clinic in Montclair and my evenings cleaning office spaces downtown. Oliver's staying with a neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, during the day, and she looks after him beautifully. The divorce proceedings have been filed and will be completely finalized in 6 weeks. Travis isn't contesting it. He isn't in a position to fight anything from where he is. I know none of this alters what I did. I know saying I'm sorry is entirely meaningless after what happened on those stairs. But I am deeply, truly sorry, Dad. Every single morning I wake up carries the weight of that regret. Oliver asks about you constantly. He doesn't understand why his grandfather doesn't visit anymore, and I just tell him that you're incredibly busy. I don't know what else to say. I love you. I know I've lost the right to say it, but it's the truth. Amanda." I read through the pages twice before folding them carefully and placing them inside my nightstand drawer. I didn't write back. The correspondence continued like clockwork, one letter arriving every single month without fail. She shared updates about Oliver's preschool, how he had learned to ride a tricycle, and a time he scraped his knee and cried out for his grandfather instead of her. She confirmed the divorce was finalized, mentioned how empty her apartment felt, and wrote about her ongoing therapy sessions, her sleepless nights, and the immense weight of her actions. She never once offered an excuse or attempted to lay the full blame on Travis, even though she easily could have. She simply delivered the unvarnished truth month after month, regardless of whether I was ready to receive it. I read every single letter, keeping them organized in the exact same drawer. Within 2 years, 24 letters had accumulated, a steady record of a daughter attempting to repair a connection she had completely broken. Michael eventually asked why I refused to reply. "Because I have absolutely no idea what to say to her," I admitted. "You could tell her she's forgiven." "She isn't." "Then tell her she isn't." I looked over at him. What exactly does that accomplish? He offered a slight shrug. "Maybe it gives her some finality. Or maybe it gives you some." "I don't care about finality, Michael. I trailed off, realizing I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. 2 years slipped away quietly. On clear mornings, I walked through the park, met Michael for coffee every other Sunday, and visited Patricia's resting place on the 1st of every month to discuss the things I couldn't share with anyone else. I turned 70 that April, and Michael brought over a small cake. We ate in quiet solidarity while watching the Mets lose on television. During the 7th inning stretch, he spoke up. "Have you given any thought to reaching out to her?" I didn't need to ask who he meant. No? It was a complete lie. But I didn't argue with him. He was right. She crossed my mind every single day, along with Oliver. I constantly thought about the daughter I raised and the stranger who had pushed me down those stairs, wondering if those two identities could ever truly reconcile. But thinking about it and taking action are two entirely different things. The 24th letter arrived on a late Tuesday afternoon in October. "Dear Dad, it has been exactly 2 years now. Oliver's 4 and will be starting kindergarten next fall. He's incredibly sharp, so smart it scares me sometimes. Last week, he asked me if you were ever coming back home. I told him I didn't know, and he looked at me and said, "Papa is upset with Mommy, isn't he?" I told him the truth, yes. Then he said, "Mommy needs to say she's really sorry." He's entirely right. I need to apologize properly, but I simply don't know how. I don't believe any apology could ever make up for my choices. So I will continue to clear my debt, hoping that one day you'll believe I am sincere. I love you. I know I include that in every letter, and I'll keep saying it until you believe me. Amanda. I folded the note and placed it with the others. 24 letters representing 2 years of words I had read completely in silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, just staring at the stack. 7 years into the arrangement, Amanda's payment was late. For 84 consecutive months, the funds had cleared precisely on the 1st of the month. By the 5th, I caught myself checking the account balance twice a day, and by the 10th, a feeling of deep concern settled in, an emotion I hadn't anticipated at all. The letter arrived on the 14th day. Dear Dad, I am so incredibly sorry for the delayed payment. Oliver came down with a severe case of pneumonia and had to be hospitalized. The medical expenses mounted instantly, leaving me to choose between settling the hospital bills or sending the payment on time. I chose Oliver, and I desperately hope you can understand. The funds will be cleared before the month concludes, I promise. Amanda. I read through the note 3 times before picking up the phone to call Michael. Do you think Giordano is going to give her a grace period on this? I asked. Are you asking for your sake, Luke, or for hers? For hers, I stated plainly. She's kept her word completely for 7 long years. Delaying a payment because her child is in the hospital is a far cry from trying to run out on a debt. I'll handle the discussion with Salvatore, Michael assured me. But Luke, maybe you should be the one to tell her that yourself. The funds cleared on the 28th, 26 days late but fully accounted for. Along with the confirmation came another letter, accompanied by a small photograph. The boy in the photo was 10 years old, with dark hair, a serious expression, and wearing a hospital gown while clutching a stuffed elephant under his arm. He looked thin, but he was offering a genuine smile. He carried Patricia's exact eyes. I stared at that image for a full hour, looking at Oliver, my grandson, now 10 years old. I had completely missed his entire childhood, because I was too angry, too hurt, and too stubborn to separate his existence from the choices his mother had made. Patricia would have been deeply ashamed of me. I sat down at the table, pulled out a piece of paper, and began to write with a trembling hand. Amanda, the payment was received, thank you. I discussed the situation with Michael, so you won't face any issues regarding the delay. Your son carries a striking resemblance to his grandmother. Focus on being a good mother to him. That is the only detail that truly matters. Luke. Her response arrived just 5 days later. Thank you, Dad. This means absolutely everything to me. We didn't suddenly become frequent correspondents, but a line of communication had officially opened, brief exchanges regarding Oliver's school updates and simple acknowledgments. It wasn't full forgiveness or a complete reconciliation, but it was actual contact. Years 8 and 9 passed smoothly, the payments continuing to clear without interruption. Oliver turned 11, then 12, and Amanda would occasionally include updated photos that I studied intently, looking at a grandson I had never truly known because I couldn't let go of his mother's past mistakes. Patricia really would have been ashamed. In the 10th year, during the 119th month, the envelope arrived significantly thicker than usual. Dear Dad, next month marks the final payment of our arrangement. 10 years, 120 months, and $300,000 fully cleared. I have kept my promise. My mind keeps returning to Oliver. He's 13 now and starting to ask much harder questions about why his grandfather isn't in his life. Dad, would you be open to meeting with us, just once, at a quiet cafe for a cup of coffee? Amanda. I sat at my table for a long time before drafting my reply. Month 120 completes the arrangement. After that, we'll talk. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early on a Tuesday morning in April. It was located right near Branch Brook Park, where the cherry blossoms were just beginning to open, the exact spot Patricia and I used to walk through every single spring. I secured a table near the front window, resting my cane against the chair. She walked through the door exactly at 10 a.m. Amanda was 46 now, the passage of 11 years leaving faint lines around her eyes and silver threads running through her dark hair. She looked tired, but the tension in her face softened the moment she spotted me. "Hi, Dad." "Amanda." We took our seats and ordered 2 black coffees. "Oliver really wanted to come along," Amanda shared softly, "but I told him the timing wasn't right just yet. I felt like the 2 of us needed to have an actual conversation first." "Tell me all about him," I said. She explained that he was 13 now, preparing for the 8th grade in the fall, excelled at mathematics, played clarinet in the school band, and showed a lot of kindness toward his peers. He hoped to study engineering one day. "He takes after his grandmother a lot," she noted quietly. "He has her exact eyes." "I know. I've looked at the photos you sent over the years." "You actually kept them?" "Every single one is sitting in my nightstand drawer. 119 letters. Tears began to fill her eyes. "I truly didn't know if you were even opening them." "I read every word." We sat in silence for a brief moment as I watched her add sugar and cream to her coffee, using the exact same movements she did when she was 7 years old. "I carried a lot of anger for a long time," I finally spoke up. "And I was entirely wrong for it. Not about what you did. That reality remains. But I was wrong to cut Oliver out. He wasn't the one who pushed me down those steps, yet I punished him for your mistakes." "Dad," Patricia would have been deeply disappointed in me, I confessed. She would have reminded me that holding on to anger is easy, but forgiveness takes real strength. I spent a decade focused entirely on being right and missed out on watching my grandson grow up. Amanda wiped away her tears. "I'm entirely different from the person I was back then, Dad." "I know you are," I replied. "I read it in your letters, watched you clear every single dollar of that debt, and saw you raise Oliver completely on your own. I watched you become the exact kind of person your mother would be proud of." I paused for a beat. "The kind of person I am proud of." In that exact moment, her composure broke entirely, and tears streamed down her cheeks. I reached across the table and took her hand, marking the very first time I had touched my daughter in 11 years. "Forgiveness isn't a single event," I told her softly. "It's a deliberate choice I have to make every single day. Some days are bound to be easier than others, and there will still be moments where I see you standing at the top of those stairs. But today, I am choosing to make the effort." "That is the extent of what I hoped for," she choked out. We finished our coffee and agreed to meet again the following month at the exact same location, with the understanding that Oliver would join us next time. When we stood up to depart, Amanda reached out and gave me a brief, careful hug. That evening, I pulled out Oliver's photograph and placed it squarely on the mantelpiece, right beside the picture of Patricia. 2 generations looking back at me with the same hopeful expression. I don't know if our relationship will ever completely mend, or if the fractures will entirely fade away. But today, for the first time in over a decade, I called her Amanda, without a trace of resentment, and she called me Dad, without an ounce of shame. It isn't total forgiveness just yet, but it marks a real beginning. And for now, that is more than enough. Looking back on everything now at 81 years old, my own missteps are completely clear to me. I see the man I used to be, the enforcer who believed force resolved problems, the father who worked 70 hours a week and labeled it affection, and the grandfather who let a family betrayal rob him of 13 years he can never retrieve. If you're listening to this story, don't follow my path. Don't wait until you find yourself at the bottom of a steep flight of stairs to realize what truly matters in life. Don't waste a decade counting letters instead of reaching out to hold the hands of the people you love. An old man shares his history not to inspire, but to serve as a clear warning. This is the lesson I've carried away. A family betrayal cuts deeper than any blade, but clinging tightly to that pain only widens the wound. Amanda pushed me down those stairs, yes, but I pushed her away for 11 long years. Which injury truly takes longer to heal? The ancient texts speak of forgiving repeatedly, a standard I struggled to meet even once. It isn't a fast or easy process, and grace rarely descends in a flash. It requires 120 months of waking up every day and choosing not to let bitterness dictate your life. A fresh opportunity was handed to me, and I came remarkably close to throwing it away entirely. My recommendation to you is simple. If someone you care about compromises your trust, feel the anger completely, but don't allow that resentment to become your prison or let it claim more years than the betrayal itself already stole. A grandfather's story should conclude with wisdom, not regret. I was incredibly fortunate. Amanda never stopped trying to fix things, and Oliver never stopped waiting for me. Not everyone receives that opportunity. Don't squander yours. Thank you for staying with me through this difficult journey. I'd love to hear your perspective on the situation. If you found yourself in Luke's position, facing such a severe breach of trust, how would you proceed? Share your insights in the comments section below. If this narrative resonated with you in some way, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future stories. As a final reminder, while this narrative was drawn from real-world themes of family dynamics and complex choices, certain elements were structured strictly for dramatic effect. If this style of content isn't to your preference, feel free to explore other videos that align better with your interests.